Hello and welcome to another HanDrinksSolo wine info video. And if this is the first of our videos that you're watching, then you should know that we have literally hundreds of videos loaded onto the HanDrinksSolo YouTube channel, where we cover everything from wine science to viticulture to wine history to unusual grape cultivars, as well as loads of other stuff is guaranteed to make you sound way more pretentious at dinner parties. But today we are here to discuss the redemption for a rogue Elgin Viognier made by Fledge & Co. Now, we've mentioned Fledge & Co. many times before because they're awesome, but there is just so much to say today that we will have to talk more about them on another day. In today's video, I want to start out by talking a little bit about Elgin wine history, and we'll move on to a little bit about Elgin wine's geography, and then hopefully that will serve context as to explain why what's in the glass is so special. Now, I have shared about Elgin's wine history in more depth in another video, which I will leave the link to on the HanDrinksSolo website. But today I'm going to summarize it by saying that about 30 years ago, Elgin was an apples and pears valley. And then there was a massive dramatic price crash for fruit in the valley, and everyone ripped out apples and pears and in a bid for financial survival planted grapevines and planted them en masse. And in fact, this was the birth of Elgin as a wine region. But then, a few years later, the price of apples and pears recovered, and all of a sudden, farmers could make way more money by planting apples and pears all over again. And so what happened is all those lovely vines that had been planted got completely ripped up, and the entire Elgin wine team was whittled down to a paltry 800 hectares or so. To give you an idea, De Grendel as a property is about 800 hectares. So this is 800 hectares under vine for the entire Elgin Valley. But what this little fluctuation in apple and pear prices did was act as some sort of capitalistic sieving mechanism, whereby anyone who had planted vines purely for their lust for profits would have ripped them out again because they knew they'd make more money planting apples and pears after the price recovery. Which means that those who bothered to leave their vines in the ground are true blue passionate winemakers and vignerons. Put another way, you can be pretty sure that almost everybody who is still planting vineyards and making wine in Elgin's day is doing it for the sheer love and passion of the craft, rather than the opportunity to make boatloads of money. But as Winona Ryder has shown us over an extended period of time, just because you have persistence and a deep passion for your craft, that is not a guarantee that you will be excellent. There needs to be a base level of talent in order to ensure success. So to prove that Elgin really does have natural talent, I'm going to reference their geography. I'm going to do so by drawing you a topographical cross-section using nothing but a pencil and the power of my mind. So while Elgin is a valley, which makes us think down, we actually know from other videos that Elgin is a valley on top of a mountain. Elgin's altitude actually ranges from about 230 meters above sea level all the way up to almost 900 meters above sea level, which is what Fledge winemaker Leon Coetzee refers to as the rim of the Elgin teacup. Now, the vineyards that provided the fruit for this redemption of a rogue Viognier are amongst the highest in the valley. And I've left another video link on the page for those of you who want a slightly more in-depth viticultural explanation as to what the effects of altitude can be on wine quality. But Elgin is not a one-trick pony, nay. It also happens to be situated bang in the middle of a rather regular cloud bank that comes in off the Cape South coast. What happens is down on the coast, kind of where Pringle Bay is, or Kleinmond, or even Walker Bay if you stretch far enough down the coast, there is cool, moist air rising off the Atlantic Ocean, and it's driven up over the ridge, over the Overberg, hence the name, and down into the Elgin Bowl. These clouds then settle in the bowl and act as a sort of diffusion layer between the sun and the valley, further reducing the solar radiation and contributing even more to what is already a rather chillsome environment. This effect was so marked that in the early days, viticulturalists swore that red cultivars would never be able to ripen in the valley. Then they reluctantly said, okay, only Pinot Noir can ripen in the valley. And then along came guys like Shannon Vineyards and Elgin Vintners and Ulmenkerk and started producing outstanding Merlots and then Pinotages from Spionkorp. And eventually viticulturists said, no, we got it all wrong. Actually, Elgin is perfectly suited to some incredible cool climate viticulture. So what does all this context and geography and history mean for the wine in the glass? Well, as we know, Viognier can often be a flabby, blousy grape with overwhelming perfume and not enough acidity. In fact, winemakers Leon Coetzee and Margot Nell refused ever to bottle Viognier on its own because of these characteristics. But when they encountered this vineyard, they decided to make an exception. So let's take a sniff and see what's in the glass. The nose is a little shy at first, but if you give it time, what begins to emerge are two categories of aromas. There's fruit on the one hand, which is a bit of citrus and peach and some really vibrant apricot. And then on the other hand, there's this floral group, which is lemon blossom, a little bit of rooibos tea, and perhaps even some sort of almond notes. So let's take a sip and see what follows onto the palate. The mouthfeel reveals what so many great Viogniers really should have, which is a kind of mix of bitter and sweet. The sweetness comes from that stone fruit. There's quite a lot of peach in there. And the bitterness comes from a kind of almondy skin thing. But really, it's more like the kernel at the center of an apricot pit than it is an almond. And if you've never eaten the pit at the center of an apricot, go and buy some apricots, crack open the pip, and you'll find inside a little baby-looking almond that really is quite delicious. But perhaps what's worth noting is that this wine has what so many South African Viogniers do not have, which is some really rather elegant acidity. There are these seams of lime juice and a little bit of tart white grapefruit that really elevate the entire wine to a whole nother level. And this really does come down to the factors that we discussed: high altitude, cloud banks, cool temperatures, as well as some pretty clever winemaking from Fledge & Co. Okay, so that's all we have time for today. But if you have ridiculous levels of self-control, then try and wait until day 4, when winemaker Leon Coetzee assures me that that is when this wine starts singing the loudest. Honestly, I have yet to make it past day 2, but perhaps you will be the first. So if you get there, make sure you leave some notes in the comment section below so that we can discover what this wine tastes like on day 4. And finally, if you want to have a slightly more in-depth viticultural explanation of the effect of altitude on wine quality, be sure to click on the link on the HanDrinksSolo website.